My name's Peter, as Russ just said, and let me introduce our panel to you. So over here on the far left, we have Karina Kiesler. She is the General Manager, Corporate Affairs and Public Relations at Vodafone Australia. In the middle here, we have Dr. Graham Barker. Graham is a retired clinical psychologist, pastor and author. And next to me, Dr. Justine Toe from the Centre of Public Christianity and Honorary Associate of the Department of Media, Music and Cultural Studies at Macquarie University. Please join me in welcoming our panel. Well, you might be wondering what are we doing putting this forum on the seventh day God Unplugged? Well, we all love our technology, so much so that at times, of course, we find it hard to even put it down. And we're also putting on this forum today because the Bible actually has a lot to say about being unplugged, about taking some time out, about resting. It even says that God rested himself after making the world. So we thought combining these two thoughts together, our love for technology and our need for some rest and being unplugged, would be a good thing to discuss. But first, let's think about the plugging in aspect. I might turn to you, Karina. How good are we in Australia at actually plugging in?
We are the second highest penetrated country in the world in terms of smartphone use, behind Singapore. And I think the last stat I saw was that we are using our smartphones more than we are using PCs to access the internet this year. So obviously growing popularity, and Vodafone is one that has publicly demonstrated what it's like to feel that the heat of the data tsunami, we call it, and not being prepared for it. So the growth has been phenomenal, and it's caught a lot of people by surprise.
Right, so it's been a very steep curve.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we, as I said, we all love our technology, so perhaps let's hear from the panellists. What do they enjoy most? Justine, what do you enjoy most about this new phenomena?
Sure. I really like the way that technology gives us access to all this information from all over the world, that we can seek a diversity of opinion and get access to information practically instantaneously. I think that's a real value. I think it's really good that we can keep in touch with people that we don't often see all that often. And I just saw this morning, you know, Kickstarter, they kind of crowdsource for funds if you want a particular project to come up. I'm a big fan of the show Veronica Mars, which was cancelled, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. But there's this Kickstarter project that if they raise $2 million, they'll make the film. You know, that helps tie up the story. So I think it only just started, and it's already up to $1.5 million. So we're going to be seeing some more Veronica Mars. So I think that's really a big thing about technology. It's people power. We can work together and get what we want done. So I think that's really positive.
Yeah. Similarly, change.org is a similar sort of enterprise. What about you, Graham?
Well, I think the miniaturization that's come about because of technology is fabulous. I don't have to wrestle this big box around the room now. I've got a flat screen TV to watch my beloved dragons. But also think just in the realm of being able to have distance diagnosis, being able to plug in scores and getting computer scores back. We're drinking clean water thanks to technology. We don't have to do our own screening for cryptosporidium. It's all done at the plant, maybe. And so, yeah, I think every day we have the benefits, and they come in the form of the medical field, communications, aircraft. I mean, you can't escape it.
Yeah.
It's just amazing the benefits we do reap. But technology giveth and technology taketh away.
Yeah, well, we might get to that a little bit later. And what about you, Karina? What do you enjoy most?
We talked a little bit about this previously. I have a terrible sense of direction, so the GPS thing has saved me on numerous occasions. I was saying yesterday that I once drove from Camaray to North Sydney and I went over the bridge. I'm new to Sydney, so I should get points that I found my way back. But without that access to my Google Maps on my iPad, I'd be lost. That and connection generally. So I think there have been moments in my life, such as rearing a newborn child, and when you find yourself up at 3 o'clock in the morning, kid doesn't talk, there's not a lot going on. Being able to tap into Facebook or to Twitter and find out what's going on in the world, it removes that sense of isolation that could otherwise set in.
Yeah, well, two very good examples there. So we enjoy being plugged in. Let's sort of now think in the realm of our work, the effect that this is having. Just this morning, coming up to the bus stop just before daylight, and there was my neighbour John, sitting down on the wall, busy typing his emails, and he said, "Peter, people are sending me emails at 5 a.m. You know, he's always on demand." Clearly, lots of efficiency gains from technology, but possibly at some cost. Justine, how do you manage this in your own sort of private life?
I don't, basically. Yeah, there is the temptation when you've got the phone within arm's reach, you can lie in bed and read your email. So there is the temptation to check not only personal email but work email to see what's happened. I think checking work email before bedtime is the worst possible thing you can do. So really
Not
don't
good
do
sleep
that.
hygiene.
No, absolutely not. But it's probably not great in the morning as well when you're just bleary-eyed. Because then the stress of the workday is not starting at 9 o'clock, but it's starting at whatever time you wake up. So it's very difficult to manage it. And one of the things that I really have a problem with when it comes to technology is the way that it keeps us on a leash in that way. Excuse me. It strikes me that it's a tool to enhance our lives, to enable us to have connection, to have access to information. But every time we answer the bell or answer the ping or the vibrate or whatever it does, we are always showing how much we are connected to it and that we need it in order to feel comfortable, to feel like we're on top of things as well. So I don't know how we manage it. I don't think we manage it very well. And I'm really encouraged when I hear companies like Intel who have dedicated downtime for their employees. I think something like 4 hours. I'm not sure how often that is, but maybe it's every 2 weeks.
Spread over a year? Or?
No. In that time, they're encouraged to have face-to-face conversations with their colleagues and maybe talk on the phone, but that they're not meant to be doing email, let's say. Yeah,
well,
so that's really encouraging.
You touched on something there about how it makes us feel. We might just that's a very important point. We'll just park that for a moment. I'll come back to Graham on that in a second. But Karina, how do you manage, because you're in this world directly, how do you manage
And I agree, but I disagree with Justine. It's, for me, being able to access my email and workload in my own time. I think the concept of 9 to 5 being for work and the outside hours being for life balance has merged and changed, and now it's about empowering us to manage our lives in the way that best suit the needs of those around us and for ourselves. So for me, I am connected a lot of the time, but it enables me to stay on top of everything, shut things down very quickly, and not stress about the fact that when I get to work there's going to be 1,000 emails in my inbox. There won't be. And if that means doing a couple of emails over breakfast, that is much better for my stress levels than otherwise. Now, and I know you're shaking your head.
Yeah, I entirely disagree with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so why do you disagree, Greg?
Well, I think if you look at how many emails you get and how many of them are essential, it's a very small percentage. I mean, most of my emails come in and I got nothing, I just hit the delete button. They're absolutely nothing to do with me personally. Okay? So I just think that if you feel like that now you're on a 24/7 hook to your business, then the business has overtaken who you are.
I think, look, my role is probably a little bit different because I manage media, and media have to put out a paper every day, and so there is there's a difference for my particular role.
When you say has to, see, I'm saying I think that, is the communication revolution actually achieving for the individual and society and humanity what it needs to, or is it just feeding itself? I mean, we talked a little bit about this before, that it seems that the amount of communication, the amount of technology is rising, but it's also creating its own need.
Well, there's a question here exactly along those lines. With all the access we have to information, are we on information overload?
I believe we are, and I agree with you to a point too. I don't think it's black and white. I think my perspective is that you need to control technology. Don't let technology control you. I think technology has been developed to enhance our lives, to enable us to do things, to give us access to the information we need. And you need to take responsibility, and I as a parent have to take responsibility to give my children modern day coping skills so that they don't get consumed by this information overload. So for me, the trick is to take that step back every now and then, and it's not easy. I'm not suggesting that it's easy. We all do get caught in the trap. On the weekend, I was up at Salamander Bay exploring this beautiful state and out on the dolphin boat looking for dolphins, and I found myself looking at dolphins through the lens of my phone, taking photos. Now, that's not enjoying life, and you don't get anywhere near the good quality photos that you do by just looking at them and the memory that you have by them. So I put it down, but it takes that self-control and awareness to put some boundaries to how you're using technology and making sure that it's not taking advantage of you.
Yeah. So Justine, there's a question which flows directly on from, I think, what Karina just said. Is technology to blame, or is it really just our own fault for not being disciplined?
Well, I think that we always want to blame technology because clearly the problem is with the technology, but I think it's within us. I don't think that we are very good at setting limits for ourselves, for one thing, which is why I think the Sabbath mentality of, there is wisdom.
When you say Sabbath, what does that mean?
Well, if I can finish my first point, then I'll come back to that.
Please,
sure.
Yeah.
So there's something within us that doesn't like limits, and the technology that we have, because it's on demand, because it fits into the palm of our hand, and it brings the world to us, we can really have an on-demand attitude to everything. So it's like, I'm in control here, I can decide what I'm going to engage with and not. When you have that served up to you on a plate, it's very hard to resist that because clearly I'm the most important person in the world. And I'm sure everyone else feels that way as well. And our technology and our engagement with technology can sometimes exploit that. So I think that's something to be aware of. When I say a Sabbath mentality, the idea that when God created the world, he did it in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. Now he didn't rest because he was tired. He rested to kind of show us in some ways that this world of work that we live in 6 days a week is not all that there is. There's wisdom in taking a break and appreciating, what life is really about, like looking at the dolphins through your own eyes. So I think that we need to acknowledge that humans can't do everything on our own, that there are limits to what we can do, and that there is great wisdom in just merely taking it all in, taking a step back, reflecting, thinking about the big questions of life, and trying to have that attitude when we think about our technology.
Thank you. We might pick up one of the thoughts you said earlier about how it makes us feel. So Graham, I might ask you to comment at this point. Just to start that off, there's a question here about how technology is supposed to save us time, but work hours seem to be creeping up all the time with, even reference to breakfast emails or my friend at the bus stop. So what can you sort of turn your mind to what might be driving this insatiable behaviour?
Well, I think there's a number of factors involved. One being our need to be accepted and belong. So if we don't respond, if we don't answer this, if we don't answer that, we're going to be excluded and rejected. So there's that sense of wanting to belong, and that's why you have people spending hours on Facebook, as well as answering all their commercial needs. There's also this sense that I have to meet expectation to be accepted. And so the expectations usually don't come from within ourselves, they come from within the commercial realm, our employer. Like, if we have to spend 24/7 available, then we're actually being controlled by the commercial world or whatever the situation is. So there's that need to meet expectations, the need to belong, and then there's just basically we like to be on top. We like to be in charge, we like to feel like we're beating the next person, so keeping ahead of everybody is really important.
So presumably it must take a certain degree of courage to actually say, perhaps I'm not going to play that game entirely.
Well, it comes back to your sense of self. If your identity is wound up in what you do and how well you can perform in the eyes of other people, then you're going to be always held to ransom. Whereas if you feel that who you are is an expression, or you can find expression in your job and those activities that are associated with it, then you have a greater capacity to say, draw the line. I don't need this.
Karina, how do you reflect on that?
I have a job. I've made a commitment that I will do this job and I get paid for that. So expectation or monetary reward or whatever it is. We sign up to these things. I've committed to delivering certain things in my role, and I do it, and I do it well because it gives me, I'm proud of it. I'm good at what I do, and I enjoy what I do, and I love what I do. I do have weekends, and I am available 24 hours to the media because that is part of my role. That doesn't mean they need me every 24, thankfully they don't. But
You are a unique situation.
yeah, okay.
So
But generally speaking, but I guess given that I am an extreme and I am a control freak by nature, to your point. So
pointing at.
yeah, I am a control freak by nature, and I need to be on top of my things, and that's for my own sense of happiness and keeping my stress levels down. And I think if I can manage it, and if I can still have that balance that makes me more than just the corporate affairs chick at Vodafone, I have a beautiful family, I get time away, I book in my holidays, I get all those things, and I spend time with my kids over meals, whatever it is. You need to be in control, and you need to set the limitations to ensure.
Personal question, but
Yeah.
can I ask, do you take your device on the holiday?
Yeah, absolutely. It keeps the kids
For
entertained
work
some of the
email-
time.
But for work emails, or?
Well, so I've only been I'll say yes. I'll say yes, I do. But I limit my access to it. So where generally speaking, my phone isn't too far from me. On holidays, I'll look at it far less often. It might be twice a day from an email perspective. But it's my phone, it's my everything. It's my Facebook, it's my Twitter, it's my...
It's your everything?
Well, it is. It's my access to everything. It's not quite my everything. I do have a photo of my husband in there.
You've raised Twitter, social
Yeah.
media, and there are some questions coming through on that now.
Yeah.
And let's turn our attention perhaps more to that angle.
Yep.
They've said that there are only 7 degrees of separation between all of humanity, but arguably, someone out there is a friend of someone who's a friend of Bill Clinton, and we're all connected much more closely these days. Surely that's a good thing, isn't it, Justine?
Absolutely, I think that's really positive. And I think we don't need to sit here and talk about the benefits of technology in that way, but what I'm interested in as well is the way that technology allows you to manage your own relationships. So there's there's the option not to pick up the call, or to maybe send a text, because sending a text is actually less taxing on you than giving time to someone to listen to them speak for 10 minutes. So that is much, it takes a lot more out of you than just sending a quick text that you can just flick away. So Sherry Turkle, in her book Alone Together, Why We Expect More from Technology and Less from Each Other, says that all of us in the room are like Goldilocks. We want things that aren't too far away, not too close, just at the right distance. And that actually includes our relationships, not just the bed or the warmth of the porridge or whatever's going on in that story.
Sure. Okay. So how do you find social media? Are you on social media, Graham? Do you use all that sort of thing?
Thankfully not.
Okay. You might still have an opinion about it in terms of.
Well, I have an opinion about it. Yeah.
Perhaps let's talk about the quality of the relationships we might be able to form virtually versus real.
Well, I agree with Justine on that it allows us to have a broad, scope of relationships, because you can be all over the world and keep contact. But if you're going to differentiate between acquaintances and those with intimate relationships, I think you have to be able to keep those layers, separate. And I would prefer to have a smaller number of closer relationships than a large number that basically you have to keep screening.
More superficial.
Yeah,
I'll
so...
say as well that as someone who has had experience of online dating, if you don't like someone, you just delete. It's a really disposable kind of attitude to
So that was just a bit of practical advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's
Thanks for that.
convenience,
That's just-
doesn't it? And that says something about the quality of relationships if they're disposable. And I don't think that that's good. We need to have that face-to-face. We need to have that contact. The mirror neurons need to work. We need to be able to have that humanity. So, you call someone and you get, if you would like to have this answer, press 1, press 2. You're dying to have someone say, yes, how can I help you? Well, we do need that personal contact, preferably face-to-face.
I guess you'd have some experience with call centres at Vodafone.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Good news, good news.
And good news, yeah. So we've taken feedback from our customers. The competition are sending jobs offshore every day. Vodafone has made a conscious decision because people want to talk to someone local that we're going to bring our offshore centres onshore. So great news.
Tasmania, though.
Tassie, yeah.
It's
Well, it's still
still
offshore.
Australia.
It's Australia.
Sure, okay.
I think, so from a Facebook perspective, I think Facebook has matured a lot, and I think of my own experience with it. I met Facebook when I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a child,
Yep.
had no one to talk to, and then I discovered this world and became addicted quite quickly. But then I got over it because it's really invasive and it is impersonal, and I don't care what you had for breakfast. If it's that good, call me, tell me about it. And, you know, so I've gone from having 300 best friends to consciously deleting and getting down to a very small group of, and I won't accept connections from work. This is my personal space. I think someone at work said to me, "Oh, how was the red wine last night in Grey's Anatomy?" And I was like, "Who are you?" That's too personal. Like, you've just come into my lounge room and I hadn't invited you. So if I can use it as a tool to keep up with my friends who I don't have the time to pick up and talk to every day, but I get a glimpse into their life, and then when I do call, I get the deeper, more personal conversation, then I think it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've worked a good balance there.
And that's the thing. So I think all these technologies have entered our lives, and we're coming to terms with them, and we're coming up with rules for them. You know, you can't break up with someone via text if you've dated more than three times. You're coming up with the etiquette to manage, unless you can delete them, then that's really easy.
It's much more efficient. You know?
But yeah, you need to take responsibility and set those limits.
A friend that I met with yesterday works right next door to the Mac store, and he said that sometimes the Mac store is referred to as a church. Possibly, is it too far a bow to sort of draw that, you know, we're almost treating technology in divine terms? That the geniuses at the Mac store are kind of like the priests of society. Are we putting technology up on such a pedestal, do you think?
I think if anyone has ever been at the mercy of a Mac evangelist, then yes, because they clearly believe in it. This is the best tool ever, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I think that we have a tendency to look at technology not simply as a tool, as an enabler, as Karina's talked about, but it's something that's going to, you know, like I think we are putting it on the pedestal, and it's something that's going to fix whatever. You know, we're looking at it to do more than it is actually supposed to do. It's supposed to enable our lives and be a tool, but we're looking at it in some ways towards our salvation. I know that's a big claim to make, but we want it to. I think we do want it to. So I'm just trying to gather my thoughts here. I think we want in technology some sort of sense of omnipotence as well, and control over our world. And I don't think it's going to deliver that. And yeah, I think we should all just shut it off every now and then and realise that the world is outside that world that's on our screen.
Yeah, Karina, you did use the word control earlier and enabling. Is there a risk there that we're asking perhaps too much of it?
Oh, look, I think it's part of our lives, whether we like it or not. And I think I can't look at it like that. It is, for me, it is an enabler. You know, talking about feelings before, how do we feel? 20 years ago, how did we feel when we lost our mobile phone with all of our contacts in it? To me, it was just, oh my God, I've lost everything. I can't move, can't move on. Today, when we lose our phone, drop it in the toilet, whatever we do with it, you don't just lose your contacts, you lose access to the news, you lose access to your contacts, you lose so much connection. So I think the feeling of not having technology today is more reflective of where we're at versus the feeling of having too much technology. Does that make sense?
I'm hearing omnipotence and omniscience and omnipresence in that. So, I think...
A connectedness to...
Yeah, all these things.
Yeah.
And it comes back to the salvation issue, I think, that it has become a church in that there's so many people whose faith is in technology, and just not communication technology, can be anything, that this is going to help them overcome their personal issues, take care of the world's problems. If we just had better technology, we'd all live in peace. It's almost a faith religion, really. And unfortunately, excuse me, the humanity gets lost in that. You know, I made reference to one of my favourite films, which is Blade Runner. Anybody? Good, okay. A few intelligent people here. And that's basically a film where they're trying to define what it is that's human. How do you define humanity? When the robot world gets so close to it, it gets really hard to tell. And I think we're in danger of substituting technology for a faith, for a salvation, whereby we really need to reconnect with the humanity in each of us. I'm not saying we shouldn't use technology, but we need to realise it's got to be merged with, as it's an enabler, it's an enhancer, it's a tool. It can't become our God.
Yeah.
I think some businesses, an example of the way we are adapting is open plan offices. So you walk into Google's, you walk into Vodafone, you walk into even Telstra, they're open plan, and that's a way of encouraging people to get up from their desk and communicate in person and not rely. And I think that's an adaptation now that we're used to email.
But isn't that just a commercial aspect to increase the harmony and therefore productivity?
Of course there are productivity benefits, but it's about, companies recognise that people can't just sit in a room with a computer.
The isolation booth, yeah.
So you've opened it, and in my office we are encouraged to, look, don't just send emails, get up and walk over and talk to someone. And it is more effective on many levels. You get things dealt with very quickly. So companies are encouraging that and seeing the benefits of it. So I think we are changing to accept that technology is an integral part of our lives. How do we manage that and the things that we put in place to ensure it's not?
Priorities needed.
Yeah.
There's another question that's just come through here, and I'd like us to sort of move on to this, in a way, a deeper level now, if we can. This whole discussion raises perhaps sort of more existential type questions about who we are and what we're living for, and whether or not deep down perhaps we might even prefer to be distracted by the trivia than to be worried about the deeper questions of life. There's a question here along those lines. Are we just afraid of silence? The proliferation of headphones, and the question just got deleted, but the proliferation of headphones and other things like that.
Technology.
Technology, yes. There, it's back again. Amazing. Screens, images, and the like. Is that the case? Are we incapable of just enjoying the moment? Justine,
Yes.
you're nodding. What?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just outside here, and I'm glad I was face to face so I could see her reaction. I was doing some vox pops and asking young people, do they ever take time out from their lives to just sit still, think about life, think about, big questions, and then not feel the urge to look at their phone. And she said that she would find that really intimidating. And then she had this weird, kind of like, weird smile that came on the end of that. And I was like going, oh, okay. Right. So, and I think that particularly for young people who've grown up in this kind of noise-saturated culture, it is really, it's confronting, it's intimidating to just stop and think, okay, who am I apart from this? I don't know. And so I do think that's a big issue. But it's not just young people as well, because there was an older lady that I knew who went to a funeral, couldn't resist the urge to text on her phone. And afterwards she said, I just couldn't resist. And I was just thinking that was an extraordinary statement, given that in a funeral of all places, it's time to take a moment to think about the big picture. Who am I? Am I happy with my life? What do I want to achieve before the inevitable? And it was just amazing, given that we've only had smartphones for a very small amount of time, and yet we are allowing them to school us in a particular ways of being that make it really difficult to switch off. I'm all for what Karina says, we need to find ways to control, we need to be really disciplined about it, but I am not confident that all of us can exercise that sort of willpower.
So the inevitable, you weren't referring to the battery running out on the phone?
No, dead.
Oh, okay, dead. Sorry, I was a bit confused there.
Dead.
Okay. So, Graham, on this sort of theme of perhaps being distracted by the trivia, is there something that's sort of part of our nature, not wanting to avoid?
Well, I think avoidance is a very dominant part of who we are. And so if we've got a valid reason to avoid silence or space, You know, we tend to fill we tend to fill space or silence with our own thoughts, and they're usually negative. I mean, most of the research says if you leave a group of people with a stimuli and you don't give them a reason, they'll come up with one, and it's usually bad. You know, like if you're waiting for the call from the doctor on a diagnosis, you usually don't go, oh, it's probably nothing. You know, your mind plays all the negatives. So I think people do want distraction from the times to be able to sit and reflect, work out what their priorities are, strategically plan in their life, think about their eternal destiny, whatever. No, distraction is really important for them. Because they're afraid of loneliness, and people can't distinguish between loneliness and solitude. You know, solitude is where you're able to go and spend time with yourself and enjoy that and benefit, whereas loneliness is where you actually are in a state of despair because all those needs you have of belonging and acceptance and being able to be part of something big, you feel you've lost that. So solitude's really good. We go back to the Sabbath thing. You know, it's not only the Lord finished and had the day off. Every day in the Sabbath, in the Genesis rhythm, starts with that. There's like a Sabbath every day. Because remember, the Hebraic model was the day started with sundown. And so you had the sleep and the rest to recharge for the rest of the day. And so every day had a Sabbath brought into it. And if you're going to have that, then it's best taken care of in kind of that solitude, not loneliness. I think, you know, that's terrible. But being able to sit and think about those things that we tend to avoid through distraction.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're soon going to be running out, so I'd like to leave time for each of our panellists to sort of, you know, making a few concluding remarks and how we're navigating sort of the being plugged in, being unplugged. So I might ask Justine to make a comment, and then I'll turn to Karina.
Okay, so just a summary of
how you're navigating it and how you think we should be navigating this.
Well, Turkle says, Sherry Turkle, who I quoted before, she says that we don't need to reject or disparage technology, we just need to put it in its rightful place. And I think that's real words of wisdom here. I've been talking about the Sabbath mentality, and Graham's also been mentioning it as well. The Sabbath is all about putting things in their rightful place because it's about recognising what is ultimate, okay? Recognising that this world is not all that there is, and that the world is to be enjoyed and to celebrate, and not only to just experience through your phone. I don't think anyone would think that here, but a Sabbath mentality is a good way of reminding us that this is really what it's all about. So I'll just end there.
Okay.
I really like that Turkle quote. So for me, I think I've been pretty clear. I think it's an enabler. I think it's up to us to be responsible for how it fits into our lives. And I think it can empower and help you get through things and achieve things, but it's not, you know, it's not everything.
Yeah, I think as long as it adds to and helps complete our humanity rather than distract from it or destroy it, I think we can celebrate and embrace it. I mean, it's one of the gifts God's given us. It's how we use that that's important.
Okay. Well, please join me in thanking our panellists today.
Thank you.